Hello everyone. I'm going to be reading August 19 entries from Hope for Today, Courage to Change, and One Day at a Time in Al-Anon. If you have the books, or any of the books, feel free to follow along. So August 19th, page 232. So luckily, it's the same page for all three books, but they all have the topics don't always parallel each other, but that could be a good thing. So I'm starting with Hope for Today, page 232, August 19. I began my habits of controlling, butting in, and focusing on others at an early age. I believed I had to protect the well-being of my family. As a child, these behaviors provided a false sense of power that helped me feel secure in the inconsistent, chaotic atmosphere of alcoholism. When I carried these behaviors into my adult life, they began to destroy my health and well-being. I became tired, cranky, depleted, sapped of spirit. I suffered from constant headaches, stomach pains, and mild depression. Did I consider seeing my doctor about these problems? No, because my focus was elsewhere. However, I did mention them to a friend who was familiar with my childhood. She had mentioned Al-Anon before, but now that I was physically falling apart, she became even more persistent in encouraging me to attend. My body hit bottom, and I took her suggestion. The idea of self-care caught my ear as I immersed myself in Al-Anon meetings and just listened. It was a foreign concept, but I was willing to attempt it. I established a self-care account in an old notebook and made 2 columns: meddling and self-care. In the self-care column, I listed things I needed to do or would like to do to nourish myself mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Each day I wrote down the minutes and hours I spent meddling and considered the cost in terms of my health and well-being. For example, instead of spending 30 minutes nagging my adult son, I could have been making a doctor's appointment to address my headaches. Finally, I had a concrete way to keep the focus on me. Thought for today. It's an illusion that depleting myself will help someone else. And here's a quote from How Al-Anon Works. Making a life for ourselves, regardless of what others are doing or not doing, must be a top priority. And this one is the reading from Hope for Today. I really like this reading. It focused a lot on self-care. And I like how she is taking inventory on here. It says here she made 2 columns in a notebook. One column was meddling and the other one was self-care. And so this entry really talks a lot about how mindset and how perspective, how emotions and mental state can really affect your physical body. It says here he or she was suffering from constant headaches, stomach pains, and mild depression. And isn't it amazing how that can really affect you in every way possible? And so, yeah, she worried a lot. She focused a lot on other people. All this negativity, all these resentments, that's under meddling and self-care. She finally found Al-Anon. I mean, she probably didn't want to attend Al-Anon because her friend has been telling her about it. And when she finally hit rock bottom, she started doing that. And that she was able to put under the self-care column. It says here, I listed things I needed to do or would like to do to nourish myself mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So I can relate to this because I've also began doing that, going to yoga and Zumba, that for me that's physically, and really that made me feel better emotionally. And for me that's also spiritual, like going hiking, just focusing on other things like the trees and using my senses, being more aware of my senses and being present and not thinking about somebody or what someone is doing or what someone is not doing. And it really helps a lot um, with being present. So under thought for today, it says, it's an illusion that depleting myself will help someone else. That's so true, because in Al-Anon, a lot of us start to focus really on someone else, and that balance really get unbalanced. There's an imbalance there, and that turns into insanity eventually. And so I really like how Al-Anon it's reminding me more of what really all my responsibilities are and where I stop. It helps me with boundaries, where another person begins versus where I stop. As much as I would like to cross that border and just go catch the other person. And remember, people can't always be a project, even though it might make you feel good. Al-Anon teaches us that sometimes habits of controlling, butting in, and focusing on others can really be harmful. So I guess there's a right way to do it, and there's not a right way to do it. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, so that's just the first reading. Let's move on to Courage to Change. Page 232, August 19. Here goes. There was a piece of reality that I never wanted to see. I loved someone who couldn't be trusted. Again and again I suffered the disappointment of broken promises, contradictions, and outright lies. Each time I felt crushed, betrayed, outraged. Nevertheless, hours or sometimes days later, I put the incident out of my mind. When the next promise was made, I trusted without hesitation and with my whole heart. I continued to find it hard to accept that I can't trust the promises of someone I love. Yet I see that most of my heartache has come from my own refusal to accept reality. Al-Anon helps me to trust my experiences more than the inconsistent words of others. I'm learning not to depend on someone who has been consistently untrustworthy, but at the same time realizing that that is no excuse to give up on the whole human race. Facing reality means accepting that many of my experiences in Al-Anon demonstrate that there are people upon who I can rely. Today's reminder. Today, I make a commitment to be honest with myself. By facing reality, I become someone I can depend upon. There's a quote from As We Understood. Awareness is so much better for me than closing out all feelings, shutting out people, withdrawing from living. No matter how hard the truth is or what the facts are, I prefer to know, look at, and accept this day. So that is the reading from Courage to Change. So basically this person has trusted and really put all his or her eggs in one basket, no matter how much that person has let her down. And of course, you're gonna feel crushed, betrayed, and outraged. And I personally, I think in people's lives, this happens at least once in their adult life. Um, and I like how the person on this passage takes responsibility and finally realize the responsibility that he or she had for herself. It says here, "Yet I see that most of my heartache has come from my own refusal to accept reality." It says, "Al-Anon helps me to trust my experiences more than the inconsistent words of others." And so, and despite learning not to trust that one person, I like that this passage really brings you face to face to the reality that even though there's a group of people that you can't trust, doesn't mean that the whole human race is untrustworthy. Because I've learned a lot of people, even from my own experience, maybe some family members or friends gave up their trust from everybody. They can't trust anyone. And I think that's going to be an issue with life because you gotta trust something, right? So this program really helps you look at reality as it is and not as how you would like it to be. It says here, "Facing reality means accepting that many of my experiences in Al-Anon demonstrate that there are people upon who I can rely." Al-Anon, you learn a lot of experience, strength, and hope. And strength comes from being able to know the difference. And it gives a lot more depth and meaning to the serenity prayer. I will leave it to that. If you want to listen to the readings again, feel free to, bring that little button to the very start so maybe you can meditate more on this or read another reading. I'm going to be moving on to One Day at a Time in Al-Anon. It's page 232, August 19. Here goes. "My attitude toward another, whether drinking or not, can have untold influence on the life of my family. Perhaps through long drinking years I acquired a habit of tearing him down, showing my contempt for his actions, indignation at the neglect of obligations. I am responsible for the consequences of such attitudes. Even a little understanding and compassion will show us that our behavior is ego-destroying, and the ego of the drinker is already painfully battered by guilt and fear. Today's reminder: I never want to forget that my spouse, with whatever faults he or she may have, is a child of God, and is therefore entitled to my respect and consideration. I will guard against assuming the role of judge and punisher, for I cannot destroy another person without inflicting great damage on myself." Quote from G.B. Shaw Candida: "It is easy, terribly easy, to shake a man's faith in himself. To take advantage of that to break a man's spirit is the devil's work." Wow, this is really good. Again, this reading addresses boundaries. I'm hearing boundaries from this because people often like pointing fingers at other people for what they've done. And yes, it's very, 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 very easy. I've done it multiple times. I probably will do it again in the future. But hey, this program, Al-Anon, is all about progress, not perfection, and taking one day at a time. Those are really good slogans to live by. Easy does it. So progress, not perfection, right? So this really talks about both the egos of not just the drinker, but for the person around the drinker. They have responsibilities, we have responsibilities, and basically this is helping sort out each person's responsibility and attitudes. Like I said, it's over here terribly easy to shake a man's faith in himself. whether that person is drinking, whether that be a woman, whether they're not drinking, whether they're addicted to other things like being a shopaholic, eating too much, narcotics, time waster. There's a lot of addictions out there, and it's really easy to shake that person's faith in themselves, and to take advantage of that really is breaking their spirit. And I love how Al-Anon really helps everybody stay within their own lanes and not be a weapon of mass destruction. Because basically, a lot of people that ends up in 12-step programs, they basically, um, including me, have been, that crazy person, um, and have contributed to some kind of mass destruction, whether it be socially, emotionally, and mentally. And we all have these mental battles in our heads. And going to 12-step meetings really helps me a lot with not making my situation or other people's situation any worse. It helps me listen and be more aware of my blind spots in life and of any character defects that I have. And it inspires me that although I'm not perfect and I'm never going to be that, it inspires me to accept the things, really, including my own faults, and to just let things go and live one moment at a time. So thank you again if you've stayed this long in my recording from the books Hope for Today, Courage to Change, and One Day at a Time. Please hit subscribe for future readings. And I hope this helps you, and feel free to give me any feedback and advice and comment so that I'm aware that somebody is finding this useful so I can keep going. I'm still trying to learn how to navigate through YouTube. So this is a start. Alright, bye. God bless.